The gunshot that nearly ended Cecilia Cole's life echoed through the foothills of the Wyoming Territory, startling the flock of crows into the dimming sky of 1868. She had not meant to step into the path of the bullet. In truth, she had merely been gathering berries along the creek's edge when the stray shot from a hunter's rifle grazed her shoulder, sending her tumbling down the muddy embankment. Blood seeped through her threadbare dress as she tried to stand, dizzy from the fall and the shock of the wound. Her frail body, already weakened from months of poor nourishment, betrayed her as her knees buckled. At 22, Cecilia had known more hardship than joy, having buried her parents to fever 2 winters past. Since then, she'd survived on odd jobs and the reluctant charity of townspeople who saw her as nothing more than another mouth to feed. "Good Lord, miss, are you hurt?" The voice came from above, deep and alarmed. Cecilia looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. A man atop a chestnut stallion peered down at her, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. In his hands, he held a rifle, the very one, she presumed, that had fired the errant shot. "I'll live," she managed, though her voice betrayed her pain. "It's only a scratch." The stranger dismounted with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime in the saddle. As he approached, Cecilia could make out his features rugged and sun-weathered, with clear blue eyes that reflected genuine concern. He appeared to be in his late 20s, his sandy hair tied back with a leather cord. "Name's Adam Zane," he said, kneeling beside her. "And I reckon that's more than a scratch. I was aiming for a buck that crossed through these parts." His hands gently examined her wounded shoulder. "Never thought I'd nearly kill a lady instead." "You didn't kill me," Cecilia said, wincing as he pressed a handkerchief to her wound. "And I'm hardly a lady, just a burden on this town is all." Adam's brow furrowed at her words. "No person's a burden by nature, miss, only by circumstance." He helped her to her feet. "I've got a cabin not far from here. Let me tend to that wound proper." "It's the least I can do for nearly shooting you dead." Cecilia hesitated. She'd learned early that accepting help often came with expectations she couldn't or wouldn't fulfill, but the throbbing pain and lightheadedness left her little choice. "I'm Cecilia." "Cecilia Cole," she said as he helped her onto his horse. "Well, Miss Cole, hold tight. We'll have you fixed up before nightfall." Adam's cabin sat nestled in a grove of pines, modest but sturdy. Inside, it was sparsely furnished yet meticulously clean. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across wooden walls adorned with a few tools and a rifle rack. With gentle hands, Adam cleaned her wound, revealing a deep graze rather than a penetrating injury. "You're lucky," he said, applying a poultice of herbs. "Another inch to the right, and we'd be having a different conversation." "Would anyone notice?" she murmured, more to herself than to him. Adam paused in his ministrations, studying her face. "Someone would," he said firmly. "I would." For the first time in months, Cecilia felt a spark of something other than resignation. Perhaps it was the warmth of the fire, the relief of being tended to, or simply the kindness in this stranger's eyes. "You're not from Pine Creek, are you?" Adam asked, binding her shoulder with a clean strip of cloth. "Born and raised. Though lately, I've felt more like a ghost than a resident." Cecilia watched as he worked, noting the careful precision of his movements. "The townsfolk tolerate me, but charity runs thin when times are hard." Adam nodded, understanding all too well. "Came here 5 years back after the war, bought this land, built this cabin with my own hands. Folks were wary at first, stranger riding in from the east with battle scars and nightmares. But a man who can break horses and hunt game eventually earns his place." As night fell, Adam insisted she take his bed while he slept by the fire. Despite her protests, Cecilia found herself between clean sheets for the first time in months, the scent of pine and leather surrounding her. Morning brought clarity and embarrassment. Cecilia rose early, determined to return to town before imposing further. She found Adam outside, tending to the horses. "I should go," she said, stepping into the crisp dawn air. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Zane." Adam straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. "At least stay for breakfast, and it's Adam. Mr. Zane was my father, and he was a far more respectable man than I'll ever be." The sincerity in his voice convinced her to stay just for breakfast, she told herself. But one meal turned into helping him mend a fence, which led to gathering eggs from the small coop behind the cabin. By midday, Cecilia realized she'd laughed more in the past hours than she had in years. "I can pay you," Adam said as they shared a simple lunch of cornbread and stew. "I need help around here. Winter's coming and there's much to prepare." Cecilia's pride warred with practicality. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity when I'm getting honest work in return," he countered. "You know Herbs saw you gathering them yesterday." "My garden needs tending, and I'm hopeless with anything more delicate than a potato." And so Cecilia stayed one day, then two, then a week. She moved into a small storage room Adam cleared out, insisting on making it her own space. During the days, she worked alongside him, learning the rhythm of ranch life. Her shoulder healed, and with regular meals, her strength returned. October arrived with a blaze of autumn colors and the first hint of frost. Cecilia had established herself as indispensable, organizing Adam's chaotic supplies, expanding his garden, and even improving his cooking, though he insisted his beans had always been just fine. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Adam clearing his rifles while Cecilia mended a shirt, he asked the question she'd been dreading. "You never speak of your family." Cecilia's fingers stilled on the fabric. "There's little to tell. Father was a carpenter, mother kept house. Fever took them both 2 winters past. No siblings, no other kin." Adam nodded, his face solemn in the firelight. "My parents passed before the war, fought for the Union, came west after, thought I'd find peace here." "Have you?" she asked softly. "Getting closer every day," he replied, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. The first snowfall came early that year, blanketing the land in silent white. Cecilia woke to find Adam already gone, his tracks leading toward the barn. She dressed quickly, worried about the animals in the sudden cold. She found him struggling with a new foal born overnight, its mother weakened by the difficult birth. Without a word, Cecilia joined him, helping to clean the trembling creature and coax it to stand. Hours passed as they worked together, speaking little but understanding each other's movements as if they'd been partners for years. When the foal finally nursed, Adam let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the barn. In that moment of shared triumph, he reached for her, strong arms pulling her close. Cecilia felt the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her palm. Before she could think better of it, she tilted her face up to his. Their first kiss tasted of snow and possibility, gentle yet urgent with months of unspoken longing. When they broke apart, Adam rested his forehead against hers, his breath clouding in the cold air. "I never meant for this to happen," he whispered. "Nor I," she admitted. "I came here to heal and work, not to fall in love," he finished for her, the corner of his mouth lifting in a smile. The word hung between them, terrifying and exhilarating. Cecilia had never allowed herself to imagine such happiness, believing it beyond her reach or deserving. "I have nothing to offer you," she said, stepping back. "No dowry, no family name." Adam caught her hand. "I don't want those things. I want your strength, your kindness, the way you hum when you work and frown when you're thinking too hard." Tears pricked at Cecilia's eyes. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," he insisted, "and I want to learn the rest over time if you'll let me." Their courtship bloomed through the winter months, each day revealing new facets of each other. Adam taught her to shoot, laughing at her determination to master the skill that had nearly killed her. Cecilia showed him how to read the stories his mother had sent west with him, books he'd kept but never opened due to his limited schooling. By Christmas, the small cabin had transformed. Cecilia's touch was evident in the curtains she'd sewn, the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the order brought to Adam's bachelor existence. They celebrated quietly, exchanging simple gifts, a carved wooden hairbrush from him, a knitted scarf from her. As they sat before the fire that night, Adam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. "This was my mother's," he said, tipping a simple gold band into his palm. "Nothing fancy but solid, like what I feel for you." Cecilia stared at the ring, then at Adam's earnest face. "Are you certain? I'm still the same woman the town sees as a burden." "You've never been a burden," Adam said firmly. "Not to me. You're my partner, my equal, and if you'll have me my wife." Through tears, Cecilia nodded, allowing him to slip the ring onto her finger. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They were married in early spring by the circuit preacher who passed through Pine Creek. The ceremony was small. A few of Adam's ranching friends, the storekeeper who had occasionally extended credit to Cecilia, and old Dr. Harris, who had treated her parents in their final days. Standing before the makeshift altar in Adam's best shirt and Cecilia's carefully mended dress, they promised to cherish each other through whatever hardships lay ahead. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Adam kissed her with such tenderness that several of the hardened cowboys cleared their throats and looked away. Life as Mrs. Zane brought changes Cecilia had never anticipated. The townsfolk who had once regarded her with pity or indifference now nodded respectfully when she came to purchase supplies. Adam's reputation as a fair man and skilled rancher extended to her by association, opening doors previously closed. Summer found them expanding the cabin, adding a proper bedroom and enlarging the kitchen. Adam had begun to take on more horses for breaking, his gentle but firm methods gaining him recognition throughout the territory. Cecilia started selling her herbal remedies to the general store, her knowledge of medicinal plants providing a modest but steady income. It was during the height of summer, as they worked side by side bringing in the hay, that Cecilia first suspected she was with child. The subtle changes in her body, the unfamiliar fatigue, the strange aversions to foods she normally enjoyed all pointed to one conclusion. She waited until evening to tell Adam, uncertainty making her voice tremble. "I believe I'm carrying your child." Adam froze, the coffee cup halfway to his lips. For a terrifying moment, Cecilia feared she'd misread him entirely, that perhaps he hadn't wanted children, at least not so soon. Then the cup clattered to the table as he stood and swept her into an embrace that lifted her feet from the floor. "A baby," he breathed against her hair. "Our baby." His joy washed away her fears. That night as they lay together in the darkness, Adam's hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, his voice soft as he spoke of all he hoped to teach their child. The pregnancy progressed through autumn, bringing both joys and challenges. Morning sickness plagued Cecilia well into her 4th month, leaving her weak and frustrated at her inability to keep up with her usual tasks. Adam took on more of the household duties without complaint, often returning from long days training horses to find her asleep by the fire, exhausted from fighting nausea. "You're growing a person," he reminded her whenever she apologized. "That's work enough." As her body changed, rounding with new life, Cecilia found herself remembering her mother, the stories she'd told of carrying Cecilia, the wisdom she would have shared had she lived to see her daughter become a mother herself. The bittersweet ache of that loss mingled with the joy of new beginnings. Winter settled over the land once more, harsher than the previous year. Blizzards howled around their cabin, but inside, preparations for the baby created an atmosphere of anticipation and warmth. Adam carved a cradle from pine, while Cecilia sewed tiny garments from fabric traded for her herbal mixtures. It was during the deepest cold of January that a knock came at their door, unusual given the isolated nature of their homestead and the treacherous conditions. Adam opened it to find Sheriff Miller from Pine Creek, his horse steaming in the cold. "Sorry to trouble you, Zane," the lawman said, stamping snow from his boots. "Got 3 travelers stranded in town. Stage broken axle and the hotel's full with the railroad surveyors. Heard you might have space in your barn at least." Adam glanced at Cecilia, who was already gathering extra blankets despite her advanced pregnancy. "We can do better than the barn," he said. "Bring them here." An hour later, their cabin welcomed the stranded travelers, an elderly merchant, a young schoolteacher headed for California, and a mother with a 5-year-old daughter. The small space filled with voices and movement, the isolation of winter momentarily broken. As Cecilia served hot stew and coffee, the mother introducing herself as Alina noticed her condition. "When are you due, my dear?" "March, we think," Cecilia replied, resting a hand on her swollen belly, "though the baby seems eager to make an earlier appearance." Alina nodded knowingly. My Lily was the same, impatient from the start. Is the midwife nearby? A shadow crossed Cecilia's face. The nearest is in Pine Creek, and with the passes snowed in. I assisted midwives in St. Louis for years, Alina offered. If your time comes while we're here, I'd be honored to help. The words were prophetic. That very night, as the storm intensified, Cecilia woke to the first sharp pains of labor 2 months earlier than expected. Adam's face drained of color when she told him, fear evident in his usually confident demeanor. It's too soon, he whispered. And the doctor, get a leaner, Cecilia managed between breaths. Now, what followed were 18 hours of labor that tested Cecilia's strength and Adam's faith. Alina proved invaluable, her calm directions guiding them through each stage of the birth. The other travelers kept the fire stoked and water boiling, while Adam remained by Cecilia's side, his hand nearly crushed in her grip during contractions. You can do this, he murmured repeatedly, wiping sweat from her brow. You're the strongest person I know. When Cecilia felt she could endure no more, when her body seemed ready to tear apart with effort, Alina's voice cut through the haze of pain. I can see the head. One more push, Cecilia, one more. With a final, primal cry, Cecilia brought their son into the world, tiny but perfect, his lusty wail filling the cabin with new life. A boy, Adam choked out, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. We have a son. They named him William after Adam's father. Despite his early arrival, William proved resilient, nursing eagerly and growing stronger each day. Alina stayed an extra week after the roads cleared, ensuring mother and child were well established before continuing her journey. The spring of 1870 brought renewal to the Zane homestead. As the snow retreated and green reclaimed the land, Cecilia recovered her strength. William thrived, his curious eyes taking in the world from the safety of his mother's arms or the makeshift sling Adam fashioned, so Cecilia could work with the baby close to her heart. Word of Adam's skill with horses continued to spread, bringing new business and possibilities. By summer, they had hired 2 ranch hands to help with the expanding operation, building proper bunkhouses for them at the edge of the property. One warm evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, William sleeping peacefully in his cradle beside them, Adam reached for Cecilia's hand. Do you remember what you said when we first met? He asked. About being a burden on the town. Cecilia nodded, embarrassed now by the memory of her despair. I believed it then. Adam's thumb traced circles on her palm. Look at what you've built since: a home, a family, a business. You were never the burden you thought yourself to be. You just needed someone to see your worth. You saw me, she agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder. When no one else did. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, planning their future in quiet voices. The ranch was growing, with potential for cattle as well as horses. William would need siblings, they agreed, laughing at how quickly they'd gone from childless to planning a brood. In those peaceful moments, Cecilia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her here, how a bullet that might have ended her life instead began a new one. The woman who once believed herself nothing but a burden had become essential to her husband, to her child, and perhaps most importantly, to herself. The years that followed brought both trials and joys to the Zane family. The harsh winter of 1871 nearly wiped out their savings, forcing them to start again with fewer horses but more determination. William grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's eyes and his mother's quick mind. A daughter joined the family in 1872, Emma, named for Cecilia's mother, followed by twins, James and Joseph, in 1875. Their homestead expanded accordingly, the original cabin incorporated into a larger house that echoed with children's laughter and the comfortable noise of a busy family. Adam's horse training business flourished, eventually allowing them to purchase adjacent land when it became available. Cecilia's herbal remedies gained such reputation that the new doctor in Pine Creek often consulted her on local plant medicines. By 1880, the Zane Ranch had become one of the most prosperous in the territory. 10-year-old William rode alongside his father, already showing talent with the horses, while 8-year-old Emma helped Cecilia with the younger boys and the ever-expanding garden. On their 12th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Cecilia with a trip to the newly constructed Pine Creek Church, where friends and neighbors had gathered to witness them renew their vows. William, solemn with the responsibility, carried the rings on a small cushion, while Emma scattered wildflowers before her mother's feet. Standing once more before a preacher, this time surrounded by the family they had created, Adam and Cecilia recommitted themselves to the journey they had begun that fateful day by the creek. "I once thought I had nothing to offer," Cecilia said softly, for Adam's ears alone as they walked back up the aisle. "Now I know better." Adam squeezed her hand. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed: a purpose beyond myself, a family to love, a home that's more than just walls and a roof." That evening, as their children played in the yard, and the sun painted the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and crimson, Cecilia Cole Zane stood on the porch of the home she had helped build. No longer a burden, never truly having been one, but a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her place in the world. "Come inside," Adam called from the doorway. William perched on his shoulders while the twins clung to his legs. "Your family's waiting." Cecilia smiled, turning toward the warmth and light. "I'm coming home," she said, and stepped through the door into the life she had once thought impossible, the life she had earned, the life she deserved.